Hello, everybody. It's me, Brent, and I'm here with Eugene Katchalov. I guess, are you a former poker player, or are you just playing for fun now? What is your official stance on your poker player career? I guess.
Hey Brent. Yeah, I consider myself a former pro poker player. I mean, I was a professional poker player. I mean, I played poker for close to 15 years. And Around 3 years ago, I transitioned into the esports industry. I still love poker, and I would like to get to have a chance to play more, but I just really wanted to kind of do something else in my life, and actually, like, I've always wanted to kind of build a business and something that I really like. So I'm glad that I got to kind of try that out now.
Awesome. At what point did you think that business was going to be esports, or was that always a thing that you knew? Like, okay, I'm going to start a business, and it's going to be esports organization.
No, no, I didn't know it was going to be esports. I became good friends with Luca Pagano, who I'm sure you may know as well from poker. Luca and I were both um, part of Team PokerStars Team Pro
Mm-hmm.
for many years. We became quite good friends. I'd say 5 6 years ago, and we were both fans of. We were both kind of gamers, and kind of even before we played poker, we used to play lots of video games. I know I used to play a lot of like StarCraft, Warcraft, and lots of other games. And we started talking about we were like following the industry. We started talking about it, and we saw this really cool opportunity to take some of the lessons that we learned from our experience in poker and actually apply it to esports. And What I mean by that is, the way we saw, for example, PokerStars used us as professional poker players as kind of as marketing tools to engage with the poker community, and to have the give experiences to people to be able to play with us, and other pros, through different kinds of live experiences. We thought that was quite successful for PokerStars at the time, and I think they were able to really capitalize on it, and capitalize on their platform in that sense. So yeah, so we saw this big industry in esports. I think today there are like over 400 million people who are fans of this industry, and we saw that it's this big, huge, growing community, and when we saw what other organizations were doing, we thought we could take an approach that nobody else was taking, and by that I mean like most organizations in esports are just heavily pro focused. Basically, they just focus at high level, where they just try to build the best possible teams, in all the different games, and
Right.
compete and win. Whereas our focus is more on the community level, which is on the bottom level. So our goal is to engage with the community, and provide value to them by kind of building a bridge, for them to more effectively interact and engage with professional players, with influencers, and also with different types of events that we create. We kind of took this kind of unique approach to the industry, and that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years. And it's been growing really, really well, and yeah, so that's where we're at today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I like what you said. Kind of stuck out to me is like a normal, I guess a non-pro esports guy, it has a chance to feel, like that team aspect and support without having to be like the top 10% of players in the world. So that's kind of a neat idea. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
supporting that.
yeah, because there's if I have to compare it with regular sports, one of the things we try to do is, like, imagine I gave you the opportunity to play with LeBron James, right, or in basketball, or a chance to to play with Ronaldo in soccer. Right? I mean, it's like we want to connect like the pro levels and the community level and through different types of events. And I think the community will then really appreciate things like this. Um, uh, because again, that's what PokerStars did with us as professional poker players.
Yeah, that's like
And
the thing everybody always says about poker, right? Is like it's the one sport where you get a chance to sort of test yourself against the best in the world there, and you're just a guy who showed up on Sunday or whatever day the tournament started. So
exactly. It's one of the things that I'm most thankful to poker for is the fact that all the different types of people that I got to meet throughout my career, people that I wouldn't have never had a chance to meet if I was probably in almost any other industry. And I think that's something that anyone can say, anyone who plays poker, because no matter what you do, in life, we're all the same when we're behind a poker table.
yeah, it's a truly unique thing in that sense, because like theoretically you could set up something and pay or play play video games with somebody who's very good. You're not going to beat them. Right? Like
Yeah,
in
yeah,
poker,
yeah.
you have a shot. Like it may not be a great shot, but you have a shot. So,
Yeah, that's a fair thing you bring up because it's the kind of the balance between luck and skill that is very that I think has a good balance in poker, right? Like that's the biggest difference between a game like poker and for example chess, right? The fact that chess has almost no luck involved, right? So if me or you were to sit down and play versus Magnus Carlsen or Gary Kasparov, we would lose 1,000 out of 1,000 games. Whereas if you were to sit down and play versus the best poker player in the world 1,000 games, you're going to win a good amount of those games. Yeah. So
maybe
because
maybe two or three. No.
over zero, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
for
yeah.
for sure over zero.
I have a
So
shot. Yeah.
exactly, and I think that's what makes poker great, right? The fact that anyone can take on the pros, and that's kind of what Moneymaker showed back in 2003, right? And that's kind of exposed the poker world to globally that someone can come from nothing and beat all the pros. So obviously that's different in esports where you don't have that in every game. Some games are very skill based. Maybe a game like StarCraft has very little luck. It's a lot more like chess. Whereas some other games, maybe like Hearthstone or these games are more, like these card games. These games also have a luck aspect, and they're actually more similar to poker because they, I would also say, I would say maybe like 20-30% are based on luck. So basically, you look at in a game like Hearthstone, the number one player in the world probably has like a 65-70% win rate, which is probably not much higher than what the top poker player would have.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like, I know with I played like a little bit of League of Legends, and the pro guys have like a 55% win rate in solo queue. Right. Like it's like these are the best players. Some of them probably higher than that, but this is that idea that the best players are still winning like 2 out of 3 games max, right?
Right, right.
So I thought that was pretty fun. So you mentioned the thing with chess and checkers, or excuse me, chess and poker, and obviously the person who says that all the time is if this was chess, I would win everything. Is Phil Hellmuth, and you guys, what is it about like 2 weeks ago announced a partnership with Phil. And now he's an advisor and a partner, or what exactly is his role?
Phil is actually an investor with us. We started speaking with Phil some months ago. He really liked the idea. When we described to him, our kind of grassroots community focused approach and this very, very different type of model. We explained our long term vision for the company and of how big it can become, and I think he really liked it. He really appreciated it. I think he liked the fact that we're using many of the lessons that we learned from poker. And honestly, I mean, I even see that there could be some connections between poker and esports in the future. Also, just kind of to quickly touch upon that, because you actually see, for example, I don't know if you know, the World Poker Tour was recently acquired by a company called Allied Esports. So basically, it's, they're trying to take the World Poker Tour business model and apply it into esports. And if you go to the Rio during the World Series of Poker, you see them having like an esports section there also, right? So there, the industries are kind of like cousin industries, the poker and esports. So I think Phil saw that as well, and he decided to join us, and yeah, we're really happy about it. Really proud of that. I think I think Phil is a great guy. I think he's I've known him for a long time, and it's really cool to have him on our side.
Yeah, that was a pretty neat announcement. I would say, from my point of view, I feel like having relationships in poker, it's like I definitely agree that there's like a nice mix of poker and esports, right? A lot of the people who are, the up and coming pros, or the guys who are becoming like the most popular players now, are all like gamers, like nerd type guys
Yeah,
who
yeah,
play games
yeah.
and really like them. I know, just off the top of my head, I know a bunch of people that play Hearthstone,
Right,
and
right,
at a
right, right.
pretty high level as well. So, that part is, it always seems like a connection. The other thing I find interesting about poker is that as those players who have been successful get older, they start to look for opportunities to invest, right? Like, instead of just partying
Yeah,
away all their money, now we're going to sit there and try to maybe create a thing, or maybe like look for something we believe in to invest in. And so I find that it's really interesting, because I think your experience as a player, obviously, and then on top of that, now you have this pool of people. I'm not saying that like you're gonna hit them all up for money, but the idea that if they're looking for something positive to invest in, they have some extra money and they have a desire to do that. So it's like a
yeah,
ready-made
and that's
investor pool.
it's it's really a great. It's that's actually exactly the way we've been thinking about it, and also because I think poker players, for them, it's also easier to appreciate what we're doing, because they've had much of the same experience as we've had. So they, I think if I were to explain our approach to them, it's much easier for them to understand it versus a regular person or a regular investor or a partner or whatnot. So yeah, definitely see that, and for sure I agree with you. There's lots of crossover between poker and esports. I even always wondered to myself, like when me and Luca first started, traveling, to different esports, like expos or conventions or competitions, like how would we be accepted as poker players? Basically, do they see poker as a sort of an esport, or is it just some sort of outside industry? And we were actually pleasantly surprised that a lot of gamers are actually poker fans as well, and they're fans, and they actually see poker as almost like another esport, right? And obviously, you have the same thing in poker, as you said. There's lots of people play Hearthstone. Lots of people. I mean, one of my close friends, obviously, you probably know Elke. I mean, he kind of
Yeah.
came from as a professional StarCraft player, back in the day in the early 2000s, and then he evolved into poker. But now you see a lot of crossover the other way. So I mean, besides us, you see some of the Germans also actually going into the esports industry
Yeah,
as
the No
well. I
Limit
mean,
GG guys, right? Yeah.
exactly. Those guys, then Fader Holtz. I mean, I know he invested into some.
I think he
Um,
invested in Team Envy, from Dallas, or like,
yeah,
yeah, and they're
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
big. Yeah,
The Overwatch, the Overwatch
they're the
team.
Dallas Fuel. So Envy is like the parent
Exactly.
company that owns the Fuel. Yeah.
Right. So there's definitely a lot of crossover, and I think that speaks to the fact that I think there's lots of synergies to be had between the two industries, and I think there could be some smart ways to maybe in the future create events, where you can do an event in poker and event in some sort of esport, maybe in StarCraft or in Hearthstone, and where both communities can have fun and engage with each other, and you can kind of expose both worlds to each other even further, and help both of them grow.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. I obviously I kind of like fell into poker and I like poker but esports and games has been like a thing. I played, games my whole life, and whether it was like when I was younger, I was playing Madden and those kinds of like FIFA
Okay.
and the sports
Yeah,
games,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then one day I discovered World of Warcraft, and then my life was forever altered to the tune of like 60 pounds, and it was not great.
Wow.
It wasn't great, yeah, but everything's fine now. But yeah, so in terms of the games and stuff like that, I would like to talk about like what kind of games you played growing up. What were some of your favorite games, and then we can like start to talk about like what games you guys are involved in. And I want to say I don't think I said that because I was nervous about saying it. It's Team Qlash, even though it
Yeah.
looks like it
Flash,
might
yeah.
be Team Qlash, which I said incorrectly. It's
Yeah.
Team Qlash, which yes, which actually makes perfect sense if you think about it, like from reading it directly. But for whatever reason, I decided to make it difficult on myself. So anyway, tell me more about the games that you grew up playing and some of your favorites.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah. So about Clash, by the way, we see this all the time. So we only realize this after we name after we name ourselves that way, and but that's okay. That's something we have to deal with and accept. That's all right. The games that I grew up playing. So I think my most memorable game was Warcraft 2.
Okay.
So I remember I was really really into it. I was part of some guilds, clans, and I was literally playing it every minute I could outside of school. So that was something that, I was really really into it, and I remember I was quite good at it for a while. Then I played some game. I remember I was really really into a game called Ultima Online. This
Oh,
was
okay. Yeah.
maybe you know it. It's kind of like a precursor to World of Warcraft.
Right. I've
I
heard of
would
it.
say.
I never played it. WoW was one of the first games like that I ever played, but
Mm.
I have heard of Ultima Online. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think that was a precursor. I was also like really, really into that. Um, then, um, then I played some StarCraft when it first came out. And yeah, I think after that I went to school and kind of I started playing more poker. So then poker took over my life, and that was the only thing I was focused on. And then I remember, when the time that I got reintroduced into esports and gaming was, I think, in 2010 or 11. We were traveling through Asia with Elki. We were playing poker, and then we went to Korea, and he took me
Oh,
to a StarCraft event, and that was really really fun. And that kind of got me back being interested into this industry.
yeah.
So yeah, I would say
Those
that's
are
my back.
fun. I went to a couple League of Legends events when I was in Korea, and those were
Oh, you did?
insane. Yeah,
Okay.
those were awesome. It was
Yeah.
really a bummer because I was in Korea for like 4 months. The one of the years that they had the World Championships in Korea, but the World Championships were going to be like 3 months after I left. So it's like,
Oh
but
yeah,
I
yeah,
got to
yeah.
see a
So of course
couple
it's
other
insane.
things. Like, yeah, it was very fun. Korea is like, I mean, it's no wonder that a majority of the people who are very good at esports come out of Korea because, I mean, it's just it's so much more part of the culture. I think gaming is becoming a part of every culture now, but it's like
Yeah.
Korea is sort of like the
Korea.
forefathers of
Yeah.
esports, really. Is it?
Exactly, exactly. Korea is at the forefront of esports. In Korea, games like StarCraft, or I mean, just in general, esports is higher than football or basketball for any other country. Like for them, that's like the national sport, I would say.
Yeah,
So
they actually
they're
have like
really
a
ahead of the
senator,
curve.
I think, or like a guy. He was at one of the events. There's a senator, like an elected official whose job it is to oversee esports.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that, but that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, considering how seriously they take it there, and like I said, they're really ahead of the curve. But it's interesting to see that now the rest of the world really really is catching up, and you see lots of money pouring into esports from all sorts of angles, and not just into esports teams or organizations, but also into stadiums. Like there's like $100 million stadium in Russia. There's like a $50 million stadium being built in the U.S.
Oh wow.
I think there's one in Philadelphia that's being built.
Yeah,
And
I know they're building some really nice things because I think like Overwatch and Call of Duty are gonna do this like franchise thing where they're actually playing in their cities. Uh,
yes,
yeah,
yeah, So
So
they're really trying to copy the sports model. And actually, also what you see in the US, and again, all over the world, is you see regular sport teams trying to enter the space. Because the reason for that is because you actually, I've seen some statistics where you see the average age of a normal sport fan is actually rising, over the last 15 years. So that means that kids are not really watching sports, as much as their parents are. So
yeah, interesting.
kids are much more into esports, and obviously, these sports organizations, they're not stupid. Like they see this tendency, so they're trying to grab on to this in some way. So that's why you see a lot of the NFL teams entering, starting Madden teams,
Yeah.
and actually I think at this point 23 NBA teams started an NBA 2K league.
Oh right,
So
I actually
they all have.
watched. I think opening. I watched some of the opening of that on Twitch. It's an interesting idea to have five guys control each guy on the
Yeah,
team. Like, but
yeah.
yeah,
And they all compete in real life. I mean, they all compete. There's a studio in New York where they all travel, and actually, that's where all the competitions happen. And the same thing is happening in Europe with the soccer clubs. So, for example, just recently, in Italy, the Series A, it's called. It's basically the largest soccer football organization, and they're going to launch two leagues, one for FIFA and one for PES. These are just two different games for soccer,
uh-huh.
the biggest. And now each huge, football club or soccer club is going to have its own esports division and compete
Yeah,
in these
wow.
games. So they're taking the exact same model, same thing that's happening in American football, in NBA. They're doing now the same thing with FIFA, and because I think these games are obviously much easier for someone who doesn't play any esports or doesn't understand what esports are. It's much easier as a transition point, right, for you to understand what FIFA,
It's soccer, right?
FIFA.
Yeah, like you've watched
Because
it,
it's just
or
soccer.
football. Yeah, exactly. It's
The
just
rules
now
are
it's
basically
somebody
the same.
controlling all the people instead of
Yeah,
the people
yeah,
controlling the people or whatever.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So at least you know the rules. At least you can follow it along, and that'll be like the first step for you to be able to appreciate just how much skill is actually involved in being able to control this. And
I've always thought like the Rocket League is good for that reason too, because it's not a traditional sport, but it plays like soccer or hockey, right? Like you get the idea. Like we're trying to get the ball into the goal. That's it. That's the entire game. How you do that is sometimes very entertaining and very difficult to do for normal people. But yeah, like one of the things I've always really liked about esports, and I guess it's the investor point as well. But one of the things I thought was neat, and I came in mostly from watching like League of Legends at first, and it was like the guys who were the original players of the game that were very good, that were streaming and making money, turn that money into these huge organizations now. Like they started an organization with the money they made from streaming, and they then built it through investors or whatever to these massive teams.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
TSM is one of the biggest. It has to be one of the biggest orgs. I don't know the numbers, or maybe I should look at these at some point. But TSM has got to be huge, right? They're in the
their
franchise LCS.
their value, their last valuation this year, I think, was 250 million.
Okay, yeah.
So
I mean that's
they're
awesome, and it's that started from a kid who was streaming League of Legends, right? And
yeah,
the same
yeah, yeah.
idea, like 100 Thieves, and these are ones
100
that
Thieves, exactly.
these
Yeah.
guys were pros. They invested in the games and in the things they were playing, and then people started to invest in them. I think that's one of the coolest things about esports is that those
and
guys.
and that's yeah, and that's because these guys actually have inherent knowledge about the industry and about what it takes to succeed, right? Like because for most people, esports is, I mean, it's like it's this big name, but it's hard to understand what does it mean exactly, right? Like most people don't really know, most companies don't really know. They see this thing like growing and getting lots of attention, but there's lots of there's lots of intricacies to the industry that most people don't realize unless you're actually in it, for years. So I think that's what gives credibility to people like you said, that started these companies, and I think what gives me and Luca credibility because we have our our poker experience and our focus for the last 3 years on esports. Because for an outsider to just come in and to try to do something, it's very, very difficult because there's lots of moving parts. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, like on a core level, you have to at least understand games and the people who play games, right? And then individual games are totally different. I know zero things about like fighting games other than I'm very
Yeah,
bad at
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
But there's an entire community of pros and people, that culture. I don't think even within esports that you could really advertise or engage that audience in the same way you would engage like a Hearthstone audience. Those are like
Yeah, so the audiences are very different. They're very different age groups, right? So like we have games like Brawl Stars or Clash Royale, which are mobile games, and they're growing really rapidly. But the age groups of those games are much younger, maybe 15, 16, 17 years old. Whereas fighting games are, I would say the average audience age is maybe 25 or older, and the same thing for StarCraft. So it's very, very different game by game. And I'd say in general, one of the things that makes esports so hard to understand for people and to appreciate, and that makes it different from normal sports, is that the way the industry exists, basically, you have new games coming out all the time, right? So you don't know. I mean, okay, League of Legends has kind of stood the test of time. Fortnite maybe is the king of the hill right now, but it's only been there for a few years. Is it going to still be the king of the hill in 5, 10 years? No one knows. So that's one of the most important aspects of this industry, is that new games are coming out all the time. And the other part is that some company owns each game, so
right,
they
yeah.
basically get to say what's what. This doesn't exist in normal sports. No one owns basketball. No one owns football. No one owns poker the same way, right? So in that sense, it's imagine now having an entity that owns it and basically
Right, they
and
determine the
gets to say,
rules, or whether or
yeah,
not it is ever. I know that a lot of pushback in general with a game like Fortnite is how the changes they make for the casual fans affect their
right,
competitive scene,
right,
and whether or not they care on some level.
yeah, yeah,
There's a
yeah,
part of me that wants to be like, well, it's the game, right? And whatever it is how it's going to be, and but then in their defense, right, basketball is in the same game. Like at its core, it's the same game all the time. Whereas now Fortnite would be like, okay, suddenly we're playing
yeah,
basketball, and now there's a giant hole in the middle of the
yeah,
half court, and now
yeah,
we're gonna deal with that. And every once in a while, a dumbbell is gonna swing through
yeah.
and potentially knock somebody out. And so I can see why that would be frustrating for people who have a competitive baseline, and then that gets changed all the time. I know that's like a thing with esports, just patches, right? Like nerfs and buffs to different things that you're playing. So, I mean, to me, I think it's awesome. I think that a lot of esports athletes are very flexible, even if it's frustrating at times. So when you mentioned like standing the test of time, you guys are involved on some level with a CS:GO team? Is that right? Because I feel like CS, Counter-Strike, is in some people's mind, and maybe I don't know this, but it feels like one of the like OG esports, and it's also been around for a while, and it's still pretty popular.
Yeah, so I mean, our strategy is a bit different. We try to focus more on the newer titles. We want to be known as because we have this community focused approach. We want to be known as for the community. We want to be known as the place to go, to find your community in any new game.
Mm-hmm.
So for this reason, we have more focus on games like Brawl Stars, Clash Royale, these kinds of mobile titles. But we also have a presence in the older titles like CS:GO and League of Legends as well. So yes, we do have a team. We're actually going to compete in one of the in the biggest league in Spain, in CS:GO. Yeah, I mean, we're actually involved in 15 different games. So
Oh wow.
we have over 80 players under contract playing for us. So it's it's a massive undertaking. But we've had some really, really impressive achievements. Actually, one of our players right now is just is performing super well in FIFA, and literally today he was playing in front of 60,000 people on Twitch
Oh
in a
nice.
in a FIFA event, and yeah, I think he's going to Atlanta next,
Those guys are so
to
good.
compete.
The FIFA dudes are so good. I mean, I played FIFA and I thought I was like okay, right? And I'm not okay. Like these guys
Yeah,
are
yeah,
so good at the game, And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. What is his name? We can check out his people can check out his
It's
Twitch channel. So.
so his nickname is Crazy Fat Gamer,
Okay,
and his name is Diego Campagnani. So
okay.
he's probably the best Italian player in the world. He won the Italian FIFA Championship.
Oh, all right, nice.
And he's been with us for the last, almost 2 years, I think, at this point.
You said
And
crazy fat gamer, right? That's what his name is.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
got it.
yeah.
I'm
Crazy
gonna
fat
definitely
gamer.
check it out. Maybe other people who are watching will check it
I
out
mean,
as well.
basically, his name, they always call him Clash Crazy. Clash Crazy.
Oh, okay, nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
Um,
easier, more accessible name. Plus, it gets the brand in there, right? Like,
yes, 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 yes,
do some
exactly.
people call him Qlash crazy? Just curious.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of
just
people
sounds like
who've never heard
me.
of
It's
Clash.
it's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
one
yeah.
guy out there that did that. Okay,
You know,
cool.
I actually thought it was more a European thing. I actually thought that maybe in the U.S. it would be easier to just know that Q should be pronounced like a C, like Clash, but I
Yeah,
shouldn't have
well,
made
like
that.
I said, I think if you now that you say it, it makes perfect sense. Before I was looking at it and I was like, oh, but there's not like a hyphen, so I don't know why my brain just was like, oh,
No, but I'm
Qlash.
saying you're not the only one, so that's
Yeah.
completely normal. So it's more a mistake on our part.
So did you okay? Just like I guess when you're creating like the logo, did you create that logo? Did you hire somebody out to do that? Like you're starting an esports org, you're like, okay, this is what we want to do. Now we need a name and we need a logo. So can you talk me through a little bit about that process, like how that went?
Yeah, back in the day, when me and Luca were first starting out, I mean, we were thinking, okay, so how do we create a cool logo? And we actually went to a site called 99 Designs, I think it's called, and basically where people submit different, potential logos, and then if you find one that you like, then you can purchase that one from
Oh,
from the
cool.
person. And then we found one that we liked, and we kind of worked with the guy on it, and yeah, and now we have our logo, and we're really really happy with it. um so yeah, I think that's how that came about.
Sweet. Okay. Well, let's see. I would say, how often do you end up traveling now as the the founder of an esports organization? Do you still travel as much as when you were playing poker, or more?
So I thought, I mean, when I played poker, I was literally like, I was living out of a suitcase, traveling from hotel to hotel, playing, basically everywhere. So I thought actually that my traveling would slow down now that I don't play poker full time anymore, but it actually has not slowed down that much because even though I'm living in Ukraine currently, with my wife, I need to be. I mean, currently Clash is focused in Italy and in Spain. I mean, we are by far the largest organization in Italy for esports, and we're becoming one of the largest ones in Spain. We're making some big headways, and so we're really really growing throughout Europe. So that obviously for that reason, I have to travel back and forth to Italy, to Spain, and other parts as well. So yeah, so my traveling, so I'm still basically living on the road a lot, a lot.
I mean, at least you're used to it, right? Practice over several years of traveling
Yeah,
all
yeah,
over the
yeah.
place. Um,
Although at some point you do want to kind of settle down and have a base and have some have some stability.
yeah, agreed. Well, maybe in a couple years, Clash will be like just so big that it basically runs itself, and you can just like point from Ukraine and let people do whatever it is they need to do and go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I could see us. I could, I think eventually, for sure, in the next few years, we're going to start probably doing things in the U.S. as well.
Oh,
So,
awesome! Yeah,
I may end up back in the U.S. It's,
why not?
I'm not stuck here for any particular reason. It's more for my wife and the fact that I have to be in Europe a lot. So it's obviously easier to travel to Europe from here rather than from the U.S. with
Yeah.
the time zone and everything.
I was always this is totally side note, not anything about like I never while I was working and you were playing, I never really got the chance to talk to you. I always thought I always liked you because my grandpa's from Ukraine, so I was like, oh
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
like yeah.
Okay.
But it was one of those things where I'm not. He passed away when my mom was very young, so I never met him, and I never got
Oh,
any
okay.
of
Okay.
that kind of like influence of anything. Like I'm just a regular American dude, but like I have like roots there. So I always thought that was kind of neat, but it was weird because I have like no real connection to it because he wasn't there. So I was like, I guess I'm jealous a little bit. But anyway, yeah. So it's a place I've
You should
always
come
like
visit.
thought of.
You should
Yeah,
come
for
visit.
sure.
Yeah.
I want to check it out at some point for sure. Um, and that was just a random side thing I've been wanting to say.
Sure.
But
No, that's a cool fact. Yeah.
okay, so just last to wrap it up, I guess. What are you guys moving into next? Is there anything that's like coming up that you want to, I guess, shout out or plug here, or maybe there's somebody out here who's going to listen to this who's like very good at some game, and maybe they want to like approach you guys about sponsorships or getting involved. Can you talk us through some of how that's going? Like,
Sure. I mean, at this point, at this stage, Luca and I are, we're continuing to grow. We're continuing to grow the team. I mean, at this point, we have 50 people working with us. So we want to continue growing. So at this point, we're looking for investors and partners. So we're definitely open to all sorts of things. So I think, like I said, for now, we're still continuing to focus on Italy and Spain. But we're starting to kind of send out feelers and see and check other markets. I think we already have we have some random followings in actually different parts of the world. Like we have because we have this clan system, and we have a large following in South America. We have a large following actually in the Middle East. We have actually in Egypt. We have a nice clan system, and actually one of our teams just made actually in League of Legends, they just won a huge event to make it to make it into the finals in that's taking place in Saudi Arabia, and where Riot is doing an $850,000 prize pool event.
Oh wow.
For the top teams, and our team, so our Qlash Egypt team made it, and they're literally like last week.
Oh, do you know when that final is? When that event is? I got to imagine it'll be on Twitch somewhere, right? Or somewhere for people to watch.
I would assume so. I don't know if it's going to be in English, but let me see actually if I have this information up.
I had a pen here and it's gone.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm already open.
No problem.
The site. It's called the Nexus Arabia 2019, and it's taking. Oh, I see. Okay, it's taking place on December 5th, from December 5th to December 7th.
Okay, cool. That's exciting. Well, good luck to the team. That's awesome.
Only 8 teams competing for 850,000. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think I think the thing with esports too that I think is cool, and that I think you guys are sort of targeting, is the idea that, as I learn more and more, there's tournaments all over the world, not just like the LCS, right? Like the Pro League of Legends or the Pro CSGO. There's tournaments all over the place every day for people to compete for money. Sometimes pretty good money, like 850K prize pool is pretty good for like an amateur, I guess, like, or semi-pro type of event that very few people heard of. So, like getting involved with those events. Are you guys putting on events as well, or?
Yeah. We do our own events, and we're putting on more and more events. We do small events, large events, but we also do kind of unique events, not necessarily competitive ones. We do kind of. Basically, we focus more on what we think is going to be entertaining.
Yeah.
So we consider ourselves more of like a kind of more like a media company rather than necessarily even an esports organization. So yeah, we definitely do. We definitely do lots of cool events. Like I'll give you an example. Like we did one really really cool event in a game called Brawl Stars. So I don't know if you know the game, but in a very simple way to explain it, it's a mobile game. Has similar aspects to League of Legends. So think of it like 3v3 like a League of Legends, but very, very quick, very fast paced. And I think all over the world is maybe like 200 or 300 million people play it. So it's a very, very popular game. We actually have one of the best teams in the game. So one of the events that we did was called the Qlash Brawl Stars Invitational, and the basic idea behind it was, so if a team is 3 people, we create a team composed of one streamer, one pro player, and one community player.
Oh, all
So
right, nice.
and we let them play together, and basically we give the community player, basically just a fan, a chance to play with their favorite YouTuber or streamer, and a pro player, and then to see how they play as a team, and that created for a very fun and entertaining atmosphere. And then we held the finals in our gaming house in Italy. We have this huge 25,000 square foot facility, where we did the finals, and yeah, it was very, very successful. It's still up on YouTube, and we got a lot of viewership, and it's just an example of an entertainment based event, not necessarily a competitive one.
No,
That
that
lots of
sounds
people
awesome.
participate.
I think, yeah, there's like the chance to play with people who are the best and just have fun with them. That does sound really cool. So it seems like you guys are doing awesome stuff. I have to like confess that like until I saw like an article somewhere, I was like I did not know that this was a thing. This was maybe like 6 months ago when I first contacted you. I was like, holy crap! I was like, I know him, and they're doing this. So I thought that was really neat. And I'm happy to help like get that word out. I mean, I don't know that many people are gonna watch this video, but at some point, I'll tweet it or whatever.
Sure,
And I'm
yeah,
sure a
yeah,
few people will because I like esports and I'll go back and watch it. But I appreciate your time very much. And if you want to like touch base every once in a while with the updates or whatever, maybe we could
sure.
figure out something like that. That'd be cool
Thanks,
for
Brent.
sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you also taking the time to interview me. And yeah, definitely happy to touch base again and do this again at some point.
Cool.
And good luck with the podcast.
Oh yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm attempting to I just interview people I want to interview. I guess that's really the whole
Sure.
goal, right? And it's not necessarily in poker. It just so happens that access to people who have played poker has been a little bit easier. So, yeah,
I think in general in life, you're going to be successful if you're doing something that you actually enjoy. If you're going to try to push, something down your own throat that you don't enjoy, you're not going to be successful. That's my philosophy in life, at least. So
there.
that's why I'm saying, I think your approach makes sense. You should only interview people they actually want to interview, and because people, I think your audience will naturally see that you're naturally curious about someone and what they're doing, and that will make your audience, you know, it'll make it a better experience, a watching experience for them as well.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm gonna stop recording real quick and then